Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and today we're doing another Women of Horror Spotlight. Today I have with us, she's an author, and she has a new book right now. You can find it anywhere you can buy books, Amazon, Goodreads, everywhere. And it's called The Corner Author Eye. It's book one, The Keeper. I have with us JJ Carpenter. JJ, welcome to the Horror Room.
Hi, Travis. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure having you on. Now, tell us a little bit about The Corner Author Eye.
I'm very happy to, and I can keep on talking, so jump in anytime you need to. So I've got it here with me. It's The Corner of Eye, book one. And as you can probably tell from my accent, I'm Australian, and this is an Australian, it's an Australian ghost story. And it's grounded in real Australian history. That's really important to me. I feel like, particularly as Aussies, if we think history, we're like, oh no, castles in England or pyramids in Egypt, but we don't really think about our own history too much. But it's actually pretty fascinating. And the more you dig into it, the more you realise how much has kind of been swept under the rug and hidden a bit. So the purpose of this series is to bring some of that to the light, but in an entertaining and spooky way.
By the way, and it's funny you bring up, I've had a lot of Aussie creators, filmmakers, and even authors. And I had no idea that Australia has such a rich history in horror.
Yeah, we are starting to come up a little bit now. If you start going out to the bookstores around Australia, we're actually starting to get horror sections. I know that's probably traumatizing to hear that we don't have horror sections in a lot of our bookstores. It's all been Stephen King. But it's starting to boom a little bit here, which is just fantastic.
I love it. I love it. I love that horror is going across the world, and we're getting to see all across the world. We're going to see creators everywhere and seeing their ideas of horror. Now, I do have a question for you. Now, so did you, when you were first came up with the idea for this book, were you planning on it to be in a series, or was that something that you came up with after the first book?
So that's a great question. And honestly, I'll just keep rabbiting on and just stop me when you need to. But I was recently living overseas in Solomon Islands. So I was there for the rioting and COVID and the big earthquake, and just had a bit of a rough time. Finally got back to Australia with my family, and I was like, oh my God, like, what am I doing? Like, it was just one of those aha moments where life had been really shit. And then it's like, actually, writing's always been the passion ever since I was a little girl. You couldn't shut me up. I was always telling stories. And I took a lot of the trauma that's happened in my own life, and I just started writing again. And at first, the book just kind of, I'd had these ideas for a while, and it just spewed out of me onto the page. I actually wrote the first draft in 6 weeks, if you can believe it. It just was that much coming out of me. And by the time I got about a quarter of the way through, I was like, this is a big story, and planned out the whole series. It's haven't announced how many books will be in this series yet, but book 2 is coming in late July, early August, and I've promised book 3 this year, so people have to keep me to task on that. And yeah, it just kind of, it sounds cheesy to say, but the story was just kind of born as I was writing it. I have planned it all out now. Every part of every book is in this brain here. So it's not the type of story that will just go on forever. It has a conclusion, and all the parts will fit neatly together at the end.
Now, as a writer, when you're writing a series for each book, how do you determine? You already have the end goal, the end game ending to the series. How do you figure out when am I going to cut each book off? How am I going to end each book?
This is actually a little bit easier for me. So I'll tell you a little bit more about the book. So it follows a character called Charlie White. So Women in Horror, it's a female MC, very strong, stubborn, a little bit like a lot of the other women I know. So she's living in Sydney. She's this high flyer, commercial lawyer. And then her life gets turned on its head when she suddenly develops this adult onset medical condition, completely throws her life into a loop. She has several close encounters with death, and she does what at least I've wanted to do a lot of times in these situations. I'm sure everyone else thinks about it. I'm just going to run away to the country. I'm just going to get out of my life. And so she moves to rural New South Wales, about 2 hours out of Sydney, and she buys this old cottage, which she's told was built in the 1920s. And she moves in and is sort of processing all of her own trauma when she starts having these strange things happen in her house. And so in this book, she's not just discovering new things about herself, and I can't say too much with spoilers, but she's also discovering the history of her house and through the 1930s, so the Great Depression in Australia. So you get a bit of a glimpse of real horror that people were living through in those times while she's helping these spirits to move on. And so each book will have a fully realised formed ghost story set in different parts of Australia's history and following most of the same characters from the book. So book 2, I've announced, is called The Road. And book 1's about the Great Depression, Australian farms, station homesteads. They're everywhere here. Most of the ruins are on private property, but just hundreds, thousands of them. But The Road is about a convict-built road in the early 1800s, which connected Sydney to the Hunter Valley, Newcastle region. And if you ask us, an Australian, hey, do you know about the Great North Road? I will just glaze over because, again, it's part of our history that everyone's forgotten. But and actually, a lot of the records were lost as well. We have no idea how many men died building this road, no idea where they're buried, don't know all their names. And so for me, it's a chance to have that creative license, take what we know, but then make it real to people again.
And that's something good too, because even in this country, things are built. Like, I look at the bridges and stuff like that. People definitely died building that stuff because they didn't have the machinery and stuff they do now, or even the safety standards. And that's something that most people, we don't think about.
Absolutely. You can drive on this road and wouldn't even know unless you were looking for little bits and pieces on the side of the road.
Now, when it came to writing this book, who was the first person that you had take a look at it and
I love
give
this
a thumbs
up? So, as I said, I've been writing since I can remember. I'm going to give you a bit of backstory here. So I started writing books when I was 6 years old. So one of my earliest memories, before I even went to school, I knew the alphabet, and I have a twin sister. And we would pull all of these random jumbles of letters together and run up to my mum, the bane of her existence, and be like, did I spell a word? And I remember, it's like a core memory. Once I almost spelled aeroplane, except for one letter. And I was like, oh, this is me. Like, language is my thing. Then I went to school and I was the bane of my teacher's existence because I read every single book they had. I was like this little 6-year-old girl. And I remember my teacher, she gave me my first novel. It was Babe. And she's like, read this. And I could see her, for fuck's sake, just get out of here. And 3 days later, I came back and I was like, I read the book. And I was so angry at her. And she goes, oh, and she quizzed me on it. And I got it all right. And I was like, that was so boring. So from that young age, I would just write them on any piece of paper I could find. I'd staple them together, put little pictures on and put them in a shoebox under my bed. And then the first time I ever wrote a novel, I was 12 years old, and it was my English teacher. He had that assignment at school: create your own world, create your own characters, create the animals that live there, and then give me a short story. And I tried so hard to write this short story, but I ended up giving him like 8,000 words. And I was 12 years old. And I said, I'm so sorry. I couldn't stop writing. It's not finished. And he said to me, that's okay. Why don't you finish it? Just keep writing. Why don't you write a novel? And it was like a light went on in my head. I was like, oh, I can do that? I didn't know I could do that. I didn't know any old person could do that. And then the one person through my whole life who's always been with me through it, who's read everything I've ever written, has been my twin sister. We're thick as thieves, and she's read all of the books I've written that will never be published. She's written all my short stories, all the non-starters that never went anywhere. And so even now I'm writing book 3, book 2's with my editor at the moment, and every time I finish a chapter, rough as guts, I will send it through to her, and she reads the story as I write it. That's my sister Sarah. Yeah.
Shout out to Sarah. I'm gonna pause for 1 second because my battery, my my charger just fell out. So hold on one second. Hold on one second. I'm gonna edit this part out. There we go. All right. All right. Technology, right?
I know. I've got everything plugged in because I'm so paranoid. I was practicing live streams before this.
Yeah.
You can go see them. They're awful.
Yes. Now, live streams are absolutely terrifying because, yes, you don't have error to. By the way, I'm not going to edit that. That's going to stay in the interview video because I don't like editing stuff out. But but the crazy thing about live streams are that I do them like once a week or a couple times a month. The thing is, I am terrified of doing live streams. I am absolutely scared like shitless when I do live streams because there's no error, there's no room for mistake, there's no error. If the power goes out, if the damn charger falls out of the wall, anything, it's just like,
yeah,
it's like, oh shit.
I'm sitting outside, I'm like, it's such a nice day, and then the sun just made the video all weird and everyone's not messaging me about the content, but why was your picture so bright?
But that's what people are like asking, like, well, how come you don't do all your interviews live? I'm like, no. No, I would get. I mean, my blood pressure will be through the roof to try and do live
Absolutely.
interviews. Okay. All right. So, so you were talking about when you were a child and you were writing and you just couldn't stop. You keep writing. Is that how you are now as a writer? Like, once you start writing, you can't stop?
So this is a hard question to answer because I think probably a lot of authors will say the same thing. If we've got the juices flowing, I can write those 8,000 words a day. Like, it just pours out of me. The story is like the characters are in my head talking to me. It sounds like I'm a crazy person, but I'll just be like, don't talk to me, put the headphones on, go in a dark room and keep typing. Mm-hmm. And then there are days where it's a little harder. And I think people call that writer's block. And it's, you got that, I'm not feeling it, or, oh, maybe I'm not really good after all, that insecurity, which is in all of us. I think authors have it really strong. And on those days, the advice that I give other people, which I take myself, is just do it, just write. And especially if you're thinking about getting started and it's like, oh, I'm not sure if it's the right time, but just do it. One sentence is more than you would have written if you just sat and stared at the screen or scrolled on your phone. And often those days when I've got the writer's block and I just manage one paragraph, I'll go back when I've got more inspiration and it'll be good. Like, it's not crap. It's okay. It might need a bit of reworking, but I suppose yeah. Because
I mean, is it hard as a writer to take time off from writing and then try to jump back into it? I mean, I would feel like you would lose that momentum.
I reckon so. People asked me that when I got back into it. So I was writing all from that age of 12 all the way up to when I was 19, nonstop, like every day. And I had my first publishing offer when I was 14. I won't say why it didn't progress. But basically, you need help when you're underage with the contract. And then when I was 19, I got my first literary agent, and I was like, "It's great!" Like, my books, and that was for the fourth book I ever wrote. But it was always those voices who were saying, "It's not going to get you anywhere. It's not going to earn you any money. You're young. You need to focus on a real job." And that's kind of what was happening when I was 14 as well. Like, it's not real. It'll be embarrassing. Like, all of those negative commentary that made me sort of shut down and be like, oh, okay, it's not the right time. And so I was 19. I was working 4 jobs to put myself through full-time uni, had the literary agent who was taking a lot of time. And so the voices won. And then I just didn't write anything that wasn't for work until my mid-30s. And that's where, all those people who keep saying, how do I get into it? It's like, you just gotta do it. And it was hard, but after those first 4 chapters, it was like a wall came down. So I think if you're one of those authors who's been writing and you get a bit of a block and you stop and take a deep breath and step back, like, just don't think of yourself as a failure. Don't let those negative voices win. It might be hard to push back that wall back down. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I'm hoping if I ever get in that situation again, I can look back and watch this and push the wall
Yeah.
back down myself.
Because I couldn't imagine like writing a story. Like say you're writing a book, and then you take a month off from writing a particular story. Like I'm gonna break it down to like TV shows and video games for me. Like I don't play video games as much as I used to, but I used to play video games and I played them for the story mode. And I would get so in depth in the story, and then life would happen, and I would take 3 or 4 months off from the video game, and then I would never go back to it because I'm like, I forgot what happened. You know, I don't want to start from the beginning. And I also feel that way about TV shows. Like, I'll watch a TV series, and then like 2 more series come up, and I miss them for whatever reason, and I'm like, shit, I forgot what happened. I don't want to, you know what I mean? I don't want to rewatch the whole series again.
As a watcher and a reader, I completely get you. Because I'm the same way. I'm watching this great TV show, and I might watch the first 2 seasons, but if there's like a year in between, I'm like, oh. And actually, one of my favourite authors was a fantasy author, and it was Robert Jordan, and he died before he finished writing his books.
Oh.
And it was the same thing, like his thick tomes. And I think he had 13 in the end because somebody finished it for him. And I couldn't. After a while, after book 8, I was like, you know what? I'm rereading each of these big fat books every time he releases one, so I'll just give it a pause. But for me, when I'm writing it, it's not just the story that I'm picking up and reading and then put down and it's gone. It's sort of part of my life. It's part of who I am. The characters are right there, so I can't forget them. Even those books I wrote when I was 12 years old, bits of the story are gone because I haven't thought about it for a long time. I can pick it back up and read it and maybe get back into it. But the characters, I've always still known who they are. It's like a person. Can't forget them.
Love it. By the way, I want to bounce off. Before my charger went out, there was a question in my head, and now it came back. So you were saying that your twin sister is the one who reads. By the way, I think that is amazing because I have 2 sisters, and one's younger and one's older, and they are so fucking brutally honest to a point where it's kind of hurtful. You know what I mean? Like, and I can trust in them more so than anybody else in my life to tell me the honest truth. Like, they will say, "Oh my goodness, that was a horrible fucking interview you did the other day. You kept clearing your throat, or you kept saying this and that," and I'm like, "Damn, okay, I thought that was a good one." But is it that same way with your sister? Like, is she going to give it to you the way it is?
Yeah, she definitely does. I mean, she does it softly. She's nice. But she does. So, example, in the book, everyone who reads it, not everyone, hardcore horror fans, I think will be fine. But a lot of people who read it, they get to chapter 12 and they're like, fuck. And they're terrified. And people message me, say, I had to sleep with the lights on. Thanks. But that chapter, when I gave that to my sister, she immediately came back to me and she said, you need to draw that out. You need to make that more painful for your readers because it's scary, but you rushed through it. And I was like, yeah, because it was scary. And so I'm writing it, and it's really awkward, and I'm like, okay, get it done. But she was really brutally honest, and now that's the chapter that terrifies a lot of the readers. Kudos to the sister.
Love it. Yes.
So my process
Siblings are the best.
They are. So I've got a brother too, got to give him a shout out as well. He's 6 years younger, and he's honest too. He said to me, I don't like this book as much as the book you wrote for me when I was, well, whatever it was, 10 years old. But that's memories, yeah? So my process, I write the chapters, get them off to my sister. She critiques as I go, and then I will edit the whole thing like several times until I'm happy enough with it that I'm ready to give it to my editor. And I also have a really great editor. She's kind of the same as my sister. She will give me all the hard truths, but nice and softly. So her name's Angela, so and Ange Redding, and she will, give me all of these amazing notes, make the book much better, go back through the editing process, and then I'll get it to my advanced readers, and they can sort of pick up any lingering little typos for me. Yeah, I know not everyone has the same process, but that's mine. And then actually, before it even gets to my editor, I have my beta reader crew. So that's not just my sister, but my mum, my sister-in-law, a couple of really close friends who will be brutal with me. And for example, book 2, I mean, book 1 ends on a bit of a cliffhanger, apparently. I mean, I thought it was nice, a bit of tension, but everyone's like, what the hell? I need to know what happens next. And so with the beta readers, they were the ones who were really critiquing that opening part of book 2 to be like, yes, okay, you've given me the resolution I need. So shout out to everyone who reads the book before it gets anywhere.
Love it. Now, as a writer, because I mean, as a YouTuber, I sometimes every once in a while will go back and watch some of my earlier videos when I first started, and I cringe. But I still watch them because I like to see how I grew over the time. Is that something you do as well? Do you read some of your older work or first work to?
Absolutely. Actually, I probably could have brought it with me. I've printed them just for myself. And so especially that book that I wrote when I was 12, it needs so much work, the editing that would be required for that thing. But I hope you do this as well. So I'll be reading it and a little cringe, but then sometimes I'll just get caught up in it too, in the story part of it and the personal side of it, and be like, actually, that was pretty good. So I hope you see that in your old interviews too, because you're awesome. So I'm sure it came through in the earlier ones, even if they were rough.
I love it. Now, do you ever get scared from reading your own books? Like, do you ever like, oh crap, I did a great job. That scared the shit out of me.
That's a great question. I got asked that the other day. I was on the radio and she's like, oh, always when I ask Stephen King if he gets scared of his books. I want to know too. So if he ever watches this, he's got to comment and let us know. Book 1, not really. I mean, chapter 12 was awkward for me and it was a bit like, oh, this doesn't feel, it was unpleasant, but it wasn't scary. And the book went out to all the advanced readers and they started telling me how scary some of them found it. One of them said that was her literal worst nightmare for a ghost. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess so. Others were like, no, I wasn't scary. So each to their own. But the other thing they started saying was, oh, it's funny. I was like, oh. So I actually have a couple of author endorsements. Karen Warren, do you know her? She's an Australian horror author.
I don't.
If you want to have a look, The Grief Hole was one of her first books that I read, and she just had her Under History come out, which is, I don't even know how to classify that. It's horror, but it's like, I don't know, mixes and breaks all the genres.
I'm writing that down right now.
Yeah, Kaaron is how you spell Karen with her. But she said, impressive debut, funny, eerie, and fascinating. And then the next review I got from M.L. Rayner, who's a British horror author, intertwines a haunting charm with a delightful dose of humour. And I was like, oh, I'm funny. Oh. Australians must be funny. That was, yeah, so there's things that surprised me in the book. But book number 3 definitely has had some moments that gave me real chills when I was writing it. I had to take a little break from it. I think book 2, I hope it doesn't disappoint people. There are definitely scary moments in there, and some of my beta readers said that parts of the book were scarier than book 1, but as a whole, I don't think it's as scary. But book 3, that's kind of, yeah, for me, at least in my taste, I find that a bit more terrifying. I've definitely had moments where I had to put the computer to the side and go cuddle a pillow. Listen to some happy music.
Love it. All right, JJ, I'm going to shoot to one of the things I do in a lot of my interviews. I'm going to ask you 3 random horror questions. This is personal opinion.
Okay, great. As long as it's not a quiz.
Okay, yes. All right. So the first question. I'm pretty sure in your books you found interesting ways to kill people or people to die. What is one way that you read in the book that you were like, out of all of them, that you were like, oh, hells no, I wouldn't want to die that way?
Ooh. In other people's books, yeah? Or any book?
Yours. In yours.
In mine?
Yes.
Okay, so I can't give away spoilers.
you don't have to say which book or anything. Yeah.
At least it's going to be disappointing for a lot of people, I reckon. But the one that kind of messed me up the most out of all of them is, and I'm not going to say which book because
you don't have
spoilers.
To. Yeah.
But it was a drowning, and I just, for me, one of the worst things to do. I'm a scuba diver as well, and so again, personal nightmare. But drowning for me has got to be one of the worst ways to go. Either that or burning. But I can picture it a bit more. I've been at 30 meters. I don't know how many feet that is. Sorry, underwater.
Yeah.
And my oxygen tank's blown, and the real fear that you get when something like that happens. I don't know if you've seen that movie, The Cave, and you see that scene where she drowns.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most terrifying things I've ever watched. So for me, drowning is just ick. Nah, that's boring, I know. But
no, listen, burning to death and drowning are my top two ways. Like, and crazy thing is about it, I've been to 3 different psychics throughout my whole entire life, right? And each time I ask them, I'm just curious, how am I going to die? You know? And each and everyone said the same exact way. They said by drowning. And I'm like, and I love the water. I love the beach. I love the ocean. I love swimming. I love all of that. Every time I get in the water, I'm like, is this going to be the time that I fucking drown? Like, yes, because yes, well, and I love the water so much.
Literal. Let's hope it's not literal. Let's hope you're like an old man and your body's shutting down and your lungs just fill up with fluid, and there you go.
Oh, that sounds awful too, JJ. Shit. You said, Travis, just imagine you're an old man, you start drowning your own lung fluid. Oh, yes, JJ, that sounds amazing.
Well, yes. I actually have some tarot cards. If you want to have a tarot reading while we're doing this, I'll go and grab them. I've got a tarot reading in the book.
Oh, my goodness. I've been looking for a tarot reader for the last two or 3 weeks to come on my show.
Oh, I would love to do it.
Oh, listen, we're going to talk after this interview. I've been looking for weeks for a tarot reader to come on, and I can't find one. So, boom, perfect. Okay, awesome.
Sweet. Well, I'm very happy to. I'm very clear on the intention setting, though. That's one of my big rules with the tarot, because otherwise it gets all weird. But there's tarot in the book too, just a little bit. I had to give just a flavour of it. And the reading that's in the book that happens, that's kind of like a key moment. I actually did that reading, and I did the reading with my intent of what reading is meant to happen for this character in this book. And it was bloody perfect. So a little bit of a background behind the scenes tidbit for you.
Love it. And the second question I'm going to ask you. Is there a book that you have up on the shelf or somewhere hidden that you're like, for whatever reason, you don't think the world is ready for this story?
Ooh, I don't think I can say yes. And the reason is I love reading banned books. And I think no matter what the story, it's been written for a reason. It's for someone. The one book that I read, I wish I could remember what the name was. It's written by the same guy who wrote Lord of the Flies, Golding, and it's a banned book in Australia. I read it in high school because I was like, no, fuck this. And I went and I bought it from America and got it shipped over as a book, so I got it into the country. And it was so fucked up. I mean, it was set in Australia as well, but there was a guy who was a burn victim from the bombings in London during the Blitz. And there are these 2 twin sisters in the book. I mean, it hit me in all sorts of ways, Australia twins, and the twins are like some sexual deviant, horrible, I don't even know what was going on. It was so messed up. If you want to read a book that will never get out of your brain, I'll find out what it is and I'll message it to you so you can, or I'll pop it in the comments later because, yeah, it was screwed up, all sorts of screwed up. I got rid of that book because I couldn't have it sitting on my shelves anymore.
Ooh. See, now I'm curious to read it, but I'm like, damn, did I want that pressure? Because I saw a movie like that last year, and I've had the film director on my show for an interview, and I'm telling you, that movie has fucked me. It's in my nightmares. It's such a fucked up movie.
Like a worm that gets into your brain. You can't dig it out.
It's beautifully made, beautifully shot, but it's so fucked up. It's like, whoa.
what just
So
happened. Am I a little bit crazy now? Yeah.
yeah. All right. The final question. So there's a lot of Australian horror filmmakers. What is one Australian horror movie that most Americans should watch?
So I unfortunately haven't seen a lot of good Aussie horror movies. Sorry if
Okay.
anyone's out there who's made them. Keep trying.
Oh my goodness! Listen, I have a lot of Australian filmmakers that will watch my show. They're going to be so upset with you, JJ.
They are, but I haven't seen their stuff, obviously. So they just in the comments tear me to pieces. There was one. I need again. You can tell my brain's a bit like a sieve. I'll put it in your comments again. It was called The Tunnel or something like that, which is actually pretty good. And that was about a group who basically went into this old tunnel into like this under city area and were hunted off by a nasty monster. So that's not a bad one. I'll find it and I'll pop it in the comments for you.
Is that called? I think that movie might be called the. Is it All Women?
No, this is a bunch of men.
Oh, okay. Because a movie like
Yeah.
that, they're called The Descent, and I was like, was that movie made in Australia? It makes sense, but okay.
There's
That's
also
what-
another one that my brother-in-law was working on once upon a time, and I don't know if it actually got up anywhere, but I saw the short for it because he was doing the sound engineering. It was bloody terrifying. It was in a hospital, and you go through these hospital doors from this nice new part of the hospital, and then suddenly it turns into this hell. And there's this really creepy doctor. And I remember watching this 5-minute short and being like, this is going to be brilliant, but I don't know if they ever got legs on it. So there's a lot of definitely great horror content makers out there, but there's actually, I think, a grant at the moment. Someone was telling me the Australian government's recognised that we don't have a lot of great Australian content. And we do, but it needs more support to get out into the world. And so they actually have a grant for people wanting to tell Australian stories. I should check it out, actually.
Fucking love it. By the way, I want to say a shout out to my Australians because as a YouTube creator, I can kind of see where my viewers and subscribers come from. The U.S. and Canada, of course, is number one. Number two is Germany. Germans, I love you guys. And number three is Australia. So I have a lot of Australians fans, and I absolutely love you guys. I want to make it out there because I hear you guys have a lot of horror film festivals too, and I would like to check that out.
I actually would love it then if all of the Aussies watch and could give me some recommendations on movies so I can improve my Aussie culture. It'd be great.
Yes. Sarah and the rest of you, yes, put it in the comments.
Please educate me. I'm actually, even bad horror movies I love, so
Me too.
all of them.
I love the bad ones.
Yeah, especially if they're deliberately cheesy.
All right, JJ, where can everyone find you?
So I am on Instagram, Bookstagram. I actually created that account just for you guys. I was never on there before, so I'm getting social media literate. And I'm JJ Carpenter Author on all of the platforms. I'm on Facebook. And then I've got my website, which is www.jjcarpenterauthor.com. Oh yeah, go and hit me up. I actually love talking to readers, and so I've got my own little series over on Instagram at the moment where I'm teaching readers how they can support an author that they really love. And one of the ones that I've got coming up is just say hi. We love it when people we don't know have read the book, they send us a message, whether it's through our website or if they're still accepting DMs, and say, your book was amazing. It really does make our day. So please don't feel afraid to come say hi and recommend me some better Aussie movies.
Love it. Well, listen, everyone, by the way, look out for a couple of weeks. JJ is going to be on my show, a live show, for a tarot card reading. I'm not going to tell you, everybody, what she's going to be. It'll be a surprise, but definitely can subscribe and keep on the Horror Room. It's going to be a fun tarot card reading show. And please also look out for the corner Author Eyes and book number 1, which is called The Keeper. Please follow JJ on her sites, Instagram, social media, as well as look out for book 2. You said in July?
Yeah, that's the plan. I'm actually heading to a meeting this afternoon to look in the date, so announcement coming soon.
Sweet. JJ, this has been a blast having you on. Of course, you already know you're coming back on soon.
I can't wait. I promise I'll have some recommendations for you by the time I come back on.
Good. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for coming to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and that's JJ Carpenter. We'll see you next time. Take care.